One of the four major banks, commercial banks in South Africa, Standard Bank, will be retrenching thousands of workers. Banking union SASBO believes it is part due to digitisation and the impact of artificial intelligence on the sector. But the loss of jobs are meant to be taken, on the chin, because the fourth industrial revolution is upon us. That's what everyone is telling us, and we're meant to embrace it. However, just what will it do to those affected, and how do we take the matter forward? Joining me to talk about this issue is, of course, the UJ Vice-Chancellor, Professor Tshilidzi Marwala, and then, of course, also Eugene Ebersohn. He is from SASBO, and that is the union that organizes banking workers. Gentlemen, thank you so very much for coming in this Sunday morning. Professor, let's start with you. The impact of digitization, the impact of the fourth industrial revolution is something that the President has spoken about. Every single minister, our communications minister, doesn't have a speech where this isn't in. The impact, though, on society is going to be rough. Are we ready to deal with it in such a way that people don't lose their livelihoods or don't get retrained to actually be part of this revolution?
No, the answer is yes and no, and largely a no. Because it will require us to reskill ourselves. It will require us to understand the role of technology in improving our productive ways in which we produce. And for this particular case where we see at Standard Bank, we saw it coming. When was the last time you visited a branch?
Exactly.
And if you don't visit a branch, then obviously we are going to see more and more of these branches actually going to disappear. But the second thing that I would like to also put forward is that there is this perception that the fourth industrial revolution will only have impact on blue-collar people.
Yes.
I think the people who should actually be very, very worried are white-collar people.
Architects, lawyers.
Architects, even just in banking,
yes.
Credit scoring. We understand now that artificial intelligence can be able to do that much better than a trained person who is normally a white-collar person. So are we ready? Yes and no. Obviously, when you see something like this, it basically indicates that the bank is ready. It's taking steps towards digitization, more digitization. But is our society ready? Are our universities and schools training people to actually fit into that new economic regime? I think we need to do more.
Okay. Eugene, let me bring you in here. You are directly affected. You represent workers that are working in the banking sector. Just explain to us the Standard Bank situation, but I also know that the other four banks have quietly also retrenched people.
I think the banks on an ongoing basis restructure their organizations. But I think this one from Standard Bank was quite large, and it caught us by surprise in terms of the numbers of staff. Now, the majority of staff, 850 or so, were directly affected by the closing of branches. And that's an indirect impact of digitization because of client behavior. They don't go to branches anymore. And as a result, those branches aren't profitable. But there's another point of digitization where jobs get redundant in a head office environment or just gets replaced. So there's two issues at stake here. But the numbers of staff caught us by surprise. And we were always of the opinion that as jobs disappear, new jobs will be created. But we haven't seen that.
So there's been no reskilling?
No, new jobs being created inside the banks. But the reskilling will take place in terms of the agreement that we reached with the bank to what are we going to do with these group of people. And because there's incentivized voluntary retrenchments made available to staff, we're hopeful that a lot of people will take it up and who will then proceed to take part of the training initiatives that the bank will pay for and maybe start their own businesses or reskill them to carry on their career somewhere else. So we'll have to see, and by the end of April, we'll know what the lie of the land is.
This is so interesting, Eugene, because you quoted in a news story here saying, people have got some of the money. How can they use it maybe to start their own business? Can they, maybe 5 or 6 people put their severance packages together and buy a franchise, for instance? But, Prof, isn't it interesting the way the banking union is adapting to this technological change. Whereas in the coal mining industry, for instance, or in, say, Eskom, the mere fact that Eskom is now threatened by, or its coal power stations are threatened by IPP's renewable energy, that's led to an absolute uproar amongst those unions and threats of strikes and really sort of damaging political action. So how does society deal with the problem of, well, the very helpful way that SASBO is responding to this challenge of renewal, and the very unhelpful way that, say, the NUM and NUMSA are at Eskom?
No, look, I mean, I think we should take a lesson from the first industrial revolution. The Luddites were a group of people who wanted to block the first industrial revolution. They disappeared, and the industrial revolution marched on. And this is not going to be different. And in this particular case for banking, I think there are two paradigms that are happening. You have one paradigm where processes in the banking system are being digitized. You have, and we call this fintech. You have another paradigm called techfin, where new banks are emerging, like Bank Zero, for example. Now, if you are on the first paradigm, you can see very well that unless you change quite drastically, you're going to actually be thrown out of business. So I'm quite, I'm quite happy to learn that the union is adapting and is even thinking about ways in which we can be able to improve this.
The government should surely be able to step in with people who are retrenched because of technology, of the new industrial revolution. Surely the government can say to people who are retrenched like that, how can we help you start a business? Make them pay less tax or no tax at all. Give them some sort of incentive. If you've been retrenched because of technology, we will help you.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously the government is also facing 30% unemployment rate. And obviously the scale is quite huge. So I think it's not just the role of government. I think all stakeholders in society must actually start saying, what do we do in an environment where the workforce is clearly going to be smaller? It's not just this industry. 18 years ago, when I was working for South African breweries, we built the brewery in Ebai that used to employ 3,000 people. Now it can be operated by 35 people. So this has been coming, and I think the sooner we start crafting ways to react to this, the better.
Eugene, this is what I wanted to talk with you about. You were saying no new jobs were created in the bank as a consequence of digitization. What were you expecting in terms of new jobs? And then also, to Peter's point, one of the major obstacles for small businesses isn't just government, Peter, it's also commercial institutions, like lending institutions, like banks. They don't want to take out risks on small businesses. Are you engaging with banks to change their policy, to appreciate the fact that people will have to start, doing different careers, and the banking policy must actually change, and the way they understand risk needs to change?
I think when I say that we expect or we're hopeful that new jobs will be created, take a little bit the example of the invention of the internal combustion engine. Jobs disappeared, but new jobs were created, totally new jobs. So what kind of jobs will be created? We're not sure about that. Surely in this exercise, new jobs were created, specifically in the IT environment. A number of jobs are going to disappear, but new jobs will be created that will require new skills. So in terms of the bank assisting employees to acquire new skills, that's one thing. The bank will be hopeful that they retain those businesses if they are successful and employ more people, retain them as clients. But with regards to changing bank policy to be more assisting those people that are ex-employees that start their own business, we haven't engaged with the bank because they would say, this is our domain, it's our funds that we need to lend out. So leave that part to management.
Yes, Prof, this is the question. Every major change that happens in society, the first people we go to are those whom we elect to be our leaders, and correctly so. Like Peter says, government needs to actually come up with a plan to incentivize those who want to start their own businesses as a consequence of losing their jobs. But surely many people will argue, in fact, Patricia de Lille said at the recent debate, it's not government's job to create jobs. They must create an enabling environment. The private sector needs to come to the party. The banking sector has particular problems. There's the whole range of things the government is doing. But we also have other private institutions that are sitting this process out. What is the role of the private sector in the recalibrating of society as the fourth industrial revolution marches forth?
The role is obviously quite substantial, but we have to understand also that private sector is more preoccupied about maximizing their own profit.
Yes.
So it can't just be the private sector only. But I think what is really important for us is to understand exactly what is happening, because there are three things that are going to happen. One, jobs are going to disappear. Two, jobs are going to change.
Yes.
Very, very important. Three, new jobs are actually going to emerge. Mm-hmm. What we don't understand is what will happen. What are the proportions? Are we going to create more jobs than they are going to disappear? The evidence actually points that there are going to be fewer jobs that are going to be created than the ones that are going to disappear. Now the question is, these new jobs that are going to emerge, are we ready for it, for them?
Clearly not.
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Absolutely. And then the second question is, these old jobs that are going to change, are our workers ready for that change? You know, it's not exactly a no. In some instances, it's a yes, but certainly we can do much more. We need to understand all those factors. But I think another thing that we really need to now start thinking about from a societal perspective is, how do we create a society in the post-work environment? Because it is pretty clear that going forward, we probably are entering an era of post-work, where we will have to start thinking about what is the definition of work. I have read about people in other countries saying that if you take care of your mother, an elderly mother, maybe it is work, and there has to be some tax breaks associated.
I want to come back to that one. Peter is itching to come in there.
The people who write about these things talk about taxing robots and the Prof is right. You know, if you're looking after your mother, that's something the state doesn't have to do, so it should give you a break on it, you know, nursing or whatever it might be. I mean, we will begin to live very different kind of lives. And the interesting thing, though, isn't it, Prof, is that because we don't know what the future holds, we can't prepare for it.
Absolutely. But I think what we can do, guys, is, for example, look at unpaid work of women. I mean, if you want your shirt ironed, your food made, your clothes checked, your children taken to school every day, if you didn't have a wife, you would have to pay for all those services. But we haven't actually factored unpaid work of women into how we calculate, for example, the GDP and how we calculate our economy. Isn't it time that that conversation gets put on the table, and as Peter says, that we actually give people breaks, and that we actually realize that that is taking burdens off the state, taking burdens off the private sector?
Absolutely, we need to do that. It is actually quite important that we do that. I need to get to the point that Bruce, you raised about taxing robots. It's impossible to tax robots because we don't even know what robots are. Your Microsoft Word is a robot, because you no longer have to employ somebody who will do spell check for you, a grammar check for you, because it can be able to do, maybe with a little bit of a bias towards an American way of writing things. So it is very difficult to uncouple robotic features from just a normal asset. You know. But the other thing that I want to also raise is that due to the fact that people are going to go out of jobs, who is going to buy things that are going to be produced?
Yes.
It's very, very important.
Where's the cash going to come from?
Where is the cash going to come from? And people are now talking about the universal basic income.
Yeah.
And mainly to drive demand. You know.
Okay, Eugene, I'm going to give you the last word. You've got 30 seconds. Your comment on this specifically as it affects your workers.
I think if there's a storm coming, you're not going to build a wall. You must build a windmill, you know, and it's something that's coming. We have to face it, and we need to be proactive. Trade unions are generally reactive in nature, but I think we need to be proactive, from government to communities to labour and to business, and from grade 1 already. We must be prepared to change, and we must be prepared to work for tomorrow. I think a lot more people are going to be self-employed in 20 years from now instead of being employed for a lifetime at a big corporate. Self-employment is going to become the thing.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you so very much for your contribution. Still ahead on The Fix, we look at the implications of South Africa giving a cash-strapped Zimbabwe a lifeline. See you after the break.